I know I've met some of you before, but I haven't met all of you before. So it's very nice to see you all here and gathering together for this opportunity to discuss with this new FPMT program, the Buddhist Mind Science program. So just out of interest, how many of you have done the three previous modules? I think Elaine has taken those ones. Just you, Shella? Has anybody else done the other modules?
Oh, maybe.
Maybe.
I can't promise you that I remember a whole lot, but I know I've been present, if that helps.
We're all works in progress, isn't it? It's like sometimes you can hear explanations like lots and lots of times, and it's like they go past your eardrum and they continue on that way. And then after a while, it can be years down the track, and you suddenly actually hear something. You're like, oh, I feel like, these things, these words have come to my ear before, but it's only now that they're really, filtering into my mind. So it happens for all of us. Okay, so those of you who haven't done any of the modules before, so where we're at with this module is kind of like in the center of the whole program, but it doesn't matter. You can start wherever you want to in the program, and you can pick up a module, put it down, do ones here and there is no problem. It's a very flexible program that they've developed. So just before we get going, um, let's just take a moment to center ourselves and focus our minds, bringing ourselves into the present moment and letting the awareness just rest in the body as it is right now. Taking a moment to just notice all the ebbs and flows of sensation running through your body. And developing a deep sense of joy that we have this opportunity with this amazing human body and this human mind that has capacity for great understanding and development. And then reflecting on whatever motivation brought you to the class today and trying to expand that out to really think, may this class, that what we're studying here today, may it act as a cause for really me being able to develop my own mind, my own potential, to bring the greatest benefit to both myself and all other beings. Okay, so just having set our motivation in that way. So, all right. Okay, so the purpose of this program, the Buddhist Mind Science, it was developed by two people who've done quite a bit of study in the FPMT programs and also I think they have some background probably in the like in psychology or the neurosciences or something like that. I'm not entirely sure. But anyway, they've put together this very nice program, which is um, it's really taking the explanations that we find in Buddhist philosophy and really trying to anchor them in our everyday experiences and also really trying to get a good sense of what is going on internally, in our minds and seeing the potential that we have within our minds, within our beings for really great development and starting to look at some of the methods that we can utilize to enhance and to walk the path to that, mental development that so that we can develop our minds to the point where eventually we can experience, really great joy, unchanging joy, and also be of great benefit to others in their own development of their minds. So at this point, the program is really aimed at a sort of foundational level. So we're really working out the nuts and bolts of how things exist, why we have the experiences that we have, and looking at those foundational practices that we can begin on in our progress, in the process of our mental development. So I think so far in the program, what was covered in the previous modules was really looking at the way that mind functions, the positive attributes of mind, the negative parts to consciousness that come and go from our mind. So there's quite a lot of discussion about that, I think. So what we're going to be talking about here in this particular module is we'll be going over some of those things that were already brought up in the previous modules. And if you weren't there at the previous modules, then it doesn't, it's not a big deal. That'll be perhaps new information, or it may be that you've heard it before in other classes. But however much we can like refamiliarize or familiarize our minds with these ideas, the better, because we want to get to a point where these explanations are not just intellectual understandings, but actually filtered down and are incorporated within the entirety of our mind, within our being. That's how we'll get the real fundamental changes in our mind. So also one of the points of this course, or the way that it's designed, is that it's not really so much like a lecture-based course. So it's not like me just talking and you listening, but it's actually much more designed as an interactive type thing. So we'll do some meditations, we'll do some discussions, and actually that's quite how I like to run classes anyway. I remember I was teaching at one center and I basically started off the classes. We recited the Refuge and Bodhicitta verse, which is, those of you who have recited it before, that's like a fairly standard start to many Buddhist teachings. And we recited that verse, and then I straight off asked them, I said, what does this line mean? What does that line mean? What's your understanding of this? And they all just looked at me aghast. It's like, it's too soon. And I was talking to the director of the center, and he said, oh, yeah, no, the other person who usually teaches here really just usually delivers the information and everybody listens. So I think they weren't expecting that. I was like, oh, right, well, that's not me. I much prefer discussion interaction. And so anytime that you do have questions or you have thoughts or comments, please do just let me know, and let's see how we go. All right, so the name of, I was going to say the name of this particular module, I was going to say is, and then I realized that actually I don't have it written down, but I think what we're doing is really looking at our potential. Sheila, do you know what the name of this particular module is by any chance? You do?
I do. Luckily I have the the calendar up. Buddhist mind science, fundamental trainings to cultivate lasting happiness.
Ah, excellent. Okay, thank you. Sorry, that was a bit of an oversight.
No.
Yeah, okay. So what we're doing here in this module is we'll be looking at first, like I said, going over a little bit of what has been covered in the previous modules, looking at the way that mind exists again, and then we'll be starting to look at some of those trainings that we can implement in order to bring ourselves from where we are now in this state that we find ourselves, which is not, we can say, entirely satisfactory. We experience a lot of suffering. Our happiness is quite fleeting. And so, what the trainings are we can implement to bring ourselves from that state into a state where we have greater control. We have greater control over our minds, greater control over our experiences, and also greater control over how much we can benefit the people around us and, throughout, we can say beings throughout the world, really. So that's the idea of this particular module. So first off, we have to really understand what the situation is that we find ourselves in right at this moment. So you've probably heard lots of times that, Buddhism talks a lot about suffering, doesn't it? We heard suffering, 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 suffering. It seems like Buddhism talks about suffering an awful lot. And that might seem a bit like overwhelming at times that we have to think about suffering so much. And in actual fact, these days, many people, when they're explaining suffering in, especially in English explanations, tend to use this word, the Sanskrit, or is it the Pali word actually? I think dukkha instead to explain this particular term. So there are merits to either way of using the terminology, whether you talk about suffering or whether you use this term dukkha. What it's referring to is really what characterizes our experiences of life. So this is the first thing that Buddha Shakyamuni actually taught, was really to explain to his followers, and we are, whether we consider ourselves followers of Buddha Shakyamuni or we are people who are interested in learning from the wisdom that he had. So we're looking at those explanations and applying it to ourselves. So in that respect, we can say that we are, people who benefit from Buddha Shakyamuni's teachings. So this is the very first thing he taught, because one of the problems that we have in our life, in our existence, is that our expectations don't meet with reality. And because we have this discrepancy between what our expectations are from life, from our experiences, and what reality actually is, then we end up with this, you can say, unease or discomfort, or essentially, problems arise because of this discrepancy. So we have this constant hope that things are going to turn out perfectly. We have this hope or this high expectation that all the things that we come across in our life, the articles of our existence, will at some point be able to give us this really great sense of happiness and comfort and ease. And we have this hope that at some point, we have this expectation at some point, we'll be able to reduce our suffering. We'll be able to kick out suffering entirely. We have this great hope, but actually, where we're at, what our experience is like right now, cannot deliver on that expectation. So if we are able to come to terms with how our existence is now, then we have much less of a, what can we say? What's the word for it? I suppose the disappointment will be less. So this is why Buddha Shakyamuni taught suffering, or taught dukkha, taught about dukkha. What it's really saying is it's not like everything in our life is pain, right? We're not saying that. We're not saying that, everything that we experience is painful, is, something to be unhappy, is it not unhappiness all the time and all of this. But we can say that overall, everything that we experience is really unsatisfactory. And that is really the meaning of saying that our life, our existence is categorized by suffering. Is this something that you've heard about before? What are your thoughts like, if I say, it's like all of our experiences are categorized by suffering, what thoughts arise in your mind? How does it make you feel?
What comes to mind is causes me to look inside and to get in touch with something that says uh, most of my suffering has to do with me. I'm causing most of my suffering with my perspective or how I see my desires. All of these things are causing me to be discontented. And then there's the weather, which I don't usually talk about too much.
And then there's the weather. So there's all the internal stuff, and then there's the weather.
Yeah, life, age, old age, sickness, and death, these things. But then there's this whole other realm when I start to realize and get rid of the things that I'm creating that are causing me to be unhappy.
Yeah, it's a very good point that you make, is that we tend to, whenever we're unhappy, whether we're, uncomfortable, even just uncomfortable in some kind of way, whenever our well-being is affected, then we tend to look outside and point the finger at objects external to ourselves as being the ones that really created the problems. It's because, yeah, as you say, it's like, oh, this thing happened, the weather's not so good, or maybe not pointing outside our bodies, but also we can even say pointing to parts of our bodies that are not working properly, or others that have treated us unfairly. So we tend to always point outside. But in actual fact, the thing that creates all the problems, you're spot on, is what's happening internally on a mental level. Yeah. So does anybody else have any other ideas or thoughts when we talk about this idea of suffering or dukkha?
Just that it's inevitable, that it's, one of the four, or there's suffering. Oh, yeah, it's inevitable. We can't avoid it too much.
Well, yes. And in actual fact, when we look at the breadth of this notion of suffering, it's really in our current state of existence, we can't avoid it at all, in actual fact. So when we talk about suffering, it gives this idea in English that we're talking just about like the unhappiness of the mind, pain in the body, illness in the body, and that is all suffering. And that's what we can identify as suffering. It's not like anybody is going to say to you, oh, no, no, that's not suffering. Definitely, we can understand that that is suffering. But actually, this idea of being characterized by suffering or in the nature of suffering, or this idea of dukkha in its entirety, is really referring to how all of our existence is unsatisfactory, even the pleasures that we experience. So those pleasures that we experience also are unsatisfactory, or we can say in the nature of suffering. They're not sufferings themselves, they are pleasures, but they're not stable forms of pleasure. So it's not that we want to therefore turf out all those pleasurable experiences of life, but what we're trying to understand is that they cannot give us what our expectations think that they can. So like, for example, we have water, right? So here I've got a cup of water. If I was to have the expectation that this water was really like nectar and was able to cure me of all my physical and mental problems, right? That's an unrealistic expectation, isn't it? Because the water can't do that. But that's not to say that you can't be hydrated by the water. So you can still utilize that water. And in fact, we need to utilize the water. Because if we didn't drink the water, you'd be like, oh no, it can't give me, that great thing that I'm hoping for, that thing that I have the expectation that it's going to be this beautiful nectar that's going to always be delicious and it's going to fix all my problems. So I won't have the water at all. That's not what we're saying here. We're saying that the water certainly has things that can be useful to us, but it doesn't meet up with that high expectation that we have of it, if we were to think that it's a nectar. I'm saying the same, you can say in the same token, if you were to drink too much water, then you actually end up with this water intoxication, which can be harmful to your health. You can end up even dying, right? Is my internet going okay? When I look at my picture, I'm sort of look a little broken up.
Working okay.
Every once in a while, it'll try and catch up, but so far you're doing okay.
Okay. Okay. So this is the same with the pleasures that we experience in life, the pleasurable experiences. So whether they're, pleasures of mind, pleasures of body, we're not saying that they are actually suffering in the sense of pain. They are still pleasures, but they are temporary, they're short-lived. Eventually, they tend to change and suffering reasserts itself. So we can say that even those pleasures really are unsatisfactory. What we're really hoping for is a state of unchanging pleasure, where we'll have like constant, well-being and happiness. But the pleasures that we have within our realm of experience are short-lived. They're temporary. They're changing. So this is what it's meaning when we say that, also these are within the nature of suffering. It's not that we therefore throw them all out, but just coming to the understanding of what they actually are, what they are able to actually give us. Does that make sense?
Yes. In other words, what you're saying, I think, is we attribute more to these things than is due them. And I often used to say, and still do, my pain and discomfort is relative to my wants and desires, because those desires have expectations, and the candy is wonderful and sweet and good until I have to go to the dentist. So it's seeing that beforehand and maybe having a little less, moderating, not looking for sense gratification, but merely to sustain oneself.
That's right. So this is exactly what I was talking about before, about our expectation and reality. And so, if you have high expectations of something, it doesn't meet up with reality, then the disappointment that you experience is like commensurate with that gap between expectation and reality. So all our desires are up here, our wishes, our hopes are up here. But what actually our life, our existence can provide is here. And if we were to come to understand that that's the case, then we straight out cut out a lot of disappointment, a lot of difficulties within our mind. Because you can't actually, at this point, we can't actually change the very nature of our lives. What that high expectation, those desires, those real graspings cause is just really more discontent, dissatisfaction within our minds. Does it make you feel like, oh, well, that feels very sort of defeatist? Does it make you feel like, oh, I don't want to really think about how, these things that I experience, these happinesses are not perfect, and, there's nothing to hope for that's going to be perfect up here? Does it make you feel a bit disappointed?
It's liberating. to realize that, because I'm
That's
not going to get it where I was looking for it. And then I realized to a large degree, it's already within.
Yeah. So there's like a twofold process that we need to be working at here. So one is coming to accept and understand what life can actually provide for us. You know, what life is actually like. So that's one thing. And the second thing, exactly like you said, Stefan, is like, where can I derive that happiness that I actually seek? I can only derive that internally from my own mind, from looking within, from slowly over time reducing those really strong emotions that are negative, that go together with my mind from time to time, and cultivating those positive states of mind. That's the only real path forward for going beyond this state of constant unsatisfactoriness. So, like I said, on the one hand, there's coming to terms with what life can actually provide. On the other hand, there's really coming to know our own minds and finding that as a path to going beyond this state of unsatisfactoriness or this state of suffering. So, if you feel that that's liberating, then that's good, because that's what it's supposed to be. Because where we are at the moment is we're stuck in this cycle of constantly wanting more than what life can give us, and then finding it can only give us this, and being constantly disappointed, hoping for more, looking for more, grasping for more. It never gives us what we really want. And so you get unhappy, you get angry, you get jealous, you get, sometimes you have pride, sometimes you have you can say attachment, which has got a very particular connotation in this Buddhist context. So there's all this constant stuff going on in the mind, and together with that, the mind constantly remains like up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. It's exhausting, right? We're going up and down all the time like this. We never get to this point where our mind is calm, clear, peaceful. That's if we have this constant discrepancy between expectation and reality. If we come to be able to learn how to accept what reality is like, then we have the chance to look back within our mind and really work to overcome those things that have created this constant disturbance of mind that we experience. That's the path forward for us, if we want to take it. The choice is each and every one of us. Nothing is being imposed upon us by somebody else. It's entirely a personal choice. If we want to develop our mind so that it becomes calm, peaceful, stable, or if we want to follow that constant disturbance, up and down, up and down, up and down, back and forth, here and there, all over the place, that's our choice too. So what we're going to look at here is exactly what is it that causes that disturbance of mind, and what are the techniques that we can utilize to start to get our mind to go in that positive, stable, calm, focused direction. Yeah. So, okay, if we look internally then and look to see what is it that really creates these disturbances of mind? So these disturbances of mind occur really due to what we call the afflictions within our mind. Is this something that I know many of you will be familiar already with this terminology of afflictions, but is it something that everybody is familiar with? I know I can't see all of your faces because you don't all have your videos on, so do let me know. Barbara, yeah, I was setting you to remember the afflictions. Jay, okay. Yes. Cynthia, I see you nodding there. Okay. All right, so just in brief, anyway. So the afflictions are really it's a term that we use to describe those states of mind that arise from time to time. And when they do arise, it's like they essentially infect the mind and make the mind unpeaceful. So another term for them, or another way they're translated in English, is disturbing emotions. And that's quite a good translation, in the sense that it gives you an idea of what their function is that when they occur, they disturb the mind. When they're absent, then the mind won't be disturbed. So then the question arises, is that if these are really the things that create problems in my mind, like, is it possible to be free from them? You know, how is it possible? You know, like, what's the point in talking about them? In fact, if we can't actually remove them from our mind. Because it feels like sometimes that these negative ways of thinking, those disturbing emotions, or those things that affect the mind like that, in that negative way. So things like anger, that we're probably all very familiar with. And when anger arises, it's quite easy to identify that it's disturbed the mind, because the mind becomes quite agitated, doesn't it? It's like, oh, I've got to get that person back. I've got to, you know, whatever is that's harming me, I've got to stop it and use whatever means that I can to do that. That's anger, essentially. So it's easy to see how anger disturbs the mind. But also, you know, we can say jealousy, when that arises, it disturbs the mind. You see someone else who has qualities, who maybe their qualities are better than yours. They've got something that you really want. And there is that sense of like, oh, I want that, isn't there? With jealousy. It's like, I really want that. I'm going to do something so that I can get that from that person. Or I'm, you know, going to appropriate that thing because I need that. I want that. I should have that. And then there's also that sense of pride, where we have the mind kind of gets this puffed up sense of being superior to others. Actually, pride is a bit of a tricky one, because pride can operate on many levels. So on the one hand, you might have a sense of pride. You look at your own qualities and you think, oh, I'm quite well educated. Look at these other people. They don't know what they're talking about. They haven't done very much education. They haven't got much study behind them, you know, very sort of like, you know, very lowly people, right? You know, there's that sense of being really superior when you see your own qualities and you're looking at other people who don't have those qualities. You know, think, I've got a university degree. How much better am I than all the people who don't have university degrees? Actually, by thinking like that, we can say that we actually bring ourselves down in our qualities, don't we? You might have a bit of paper, but in terms of the qualities of mind, you know, just having a piece of paper doesn't make you a better person, does it? I do have a piece of paper. Definitely hasn't made me a better person. So, yeah, those kind of things, that puffing up of the mind. But also with pride, you can also have a sense of pride where you look at somebody who you know has superior qualities to you, but instead of seeing that there is quite a discrepancy between where your qualities are and where their qualities are, it's like it pulls you up, you know, it's like, oh, I'm just a little bit under them in terms of qualities, you know, it's like they're a little better than me. Yeah, that's also pride. So you're not necessarily looking down on somebody else thinking that they're so much worse than you. But also when you puff yourself up to being, oh, not too bad compared to that other person who's actually quite superior, that's also pride. Again, it disturbs the mind. So this mind cannot be calm and peaceful when you have that sense of puffing up in the mind. So that's another one of these afflictions or disturbing emotions. And then we have a very challenging one, attachment. So I know many of you will understand this concept of attachment in Buddhism. So it's got a very specific meaning here. So with attachment, we're not talking about that sort of secure attachment that you would have with, like, you know, a person who brought you up. That's said to be, you know, quite important, especially in the early years. To have that security of attachment helps sort of like, what can we say, stabilize you in life. And without that, it can be quite problematic for, you know, a child who missed that secure attachment in the early years. So we're not talking about that. in Buddhism, it's referring to this really this over exaggeration, this grasping at something being much better than it actually is. So it very much feeds into what we were talking about before, hopes and reality. So attachment is that thing that grasps something that you like to be so much better than it actually is. Like I was saying before, if you have that sense of like that water is actually nectar, you know, it's like it's going to fix all my problems. You're having that exaggerated grasping towards that object. It doesn't actually exist like that. It can't deliver on the promise that you set up for it. Or we can think about it in terms of like, you know, especially when you think of it in terms of relationships, it's very clear to see how attachment works. In the early days of a relationship, then, you know, that person that you've just met, they seem like amazing, like so amazing. Everything they do is amazing. It's great. You know, you have that sense of like, oh, you know, I just want to be in their presence all the time. I remember like years and years ago, before I was a nun, and I went to one retreat. It was like on the Lum Rim. And the nun who'd been taking it, she'd just finished talking about attachment and how, you know, especially in terms of relationships, you know, can really get quite out of hand. You just think this person is amazing. They're going to fix all your problems. You're going to be happy all the time from now on. You know, it's the happily ever after syndrome, let's say. You know, we were all brought up on the fairy tales, weren't we? Like, and at the end, they all lived happily ever after. I'm not sure that anybody has lived just entirely happily ever after, have they? There's always problems, there's always issues in any kind of relationship. I've never encountered anybody who's said that they've never had any issues whatsoever in their relationships from the very time that they first met that person. But we have this happily ever after syndrome that we've carried throughout our lives. Like, if I just get this, then, you know, I'll be happily forever after. If I get this, you know, if I end up with that person, we'll live happily forever after. If I get the new job, I'll live happily forever after. If I get the new car, I'll live happily forever after, right? This is the syndrome that we live with our entire lives. So anyway, the nun was talking about how there is, you know, we can see clearly how we have this attachment in relationships. And so one of the methods for really reducing attachment, and this is a very common method, a common explanation in Buddhism, is to think when it's to do with another person, is to think about those unpalatable aspects of their body. Because usually, you know, when you talk about first meeting a person, a lot of the attraction, a lot of the attachment is very much dependent upon how you think about their body, right? The attractiveness of their body. So in order to reduce that, then you can look at some of those unpalatable or unpleasant aspects of the body. So think about, you know, what the body is made up of, how it's made up of the, you know, flesh, muscle, bone, sinew, and then you've got all the bodily fluids that go on, and then, you know, what comes out when you go to the toilet. So she was talking about this, and one of the other people on the course is this guy, and he'd just started a relationship with a girl, and we were talking over lunch, and he said, yeah, I mean, I really have difficulties with this attachment, you know, because I just had, you know, it's just everything about her I just really love. And I said, well, what about, you know, like the nun was saying, thinking about all the bodily fluids. And he's like, but, you know, even when she goes to the toilet, I still find that so attractive. Yeah, so I'm not sure that would have necessarily lasted the length of their relationship. Yeah. So this is what happens with our attachment, is that it doesn't disturb our mind in the way that anger does. Very clearly, when anger arises, we don't like it. Our mind becomes very unpleasant to be with. Attachment, on the other hand, we have this sense of pleasantness that comes with it. Don't we? It's like there's that sense of feeling of nice, I like, that comes with the attachment. But in actual fact, the attachment, even though you have that sense of pleasure that's with it, the attachment also disturbs the mind. It makes your mind grasp again and again for things. I've got to have this. I need to have that. I want to have that. I need to have more of this. I don't have enough. So that constant grasping, that playing into the desires of attachment also stops the mind from being calm, peaceful, focused. And that calmness and peacefulness is really what is proper happiness. So all of these different disturbing emotions or afflictions are things that create problems for our mind, that keep us in this cycle of, wanting more than what life can actually deliver. And that constant disappointment.
Are we the ones who inflict this upon ourselves?
We are. Yeah, there is nobody else who inflicts it upon us. It is only ourselves.
And it's not misconstruing what's actually going on, because it comes under a different wrapper, but to realize the essence of it and where it's going to go and where it's not. But the inflictor is the self on the self, allowing these various aspects of seeking from the outside, looking from the outside to fill. I want to share a quick, they got these deer in Siberia. They call the musk deer. I don't know if any of you heard about them. They have this pouch that is euphoric, highly prized, very expensive oil within them. In the springtime, it ignites and they smell it and they run around intoxicated, trying to find the source of this wonderful scent, this musk oil. They run into trees. The story is that they kill themselves trying to obtain what they already possess. And it reminds me of that when you're sharing.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds pretty much like what we do to ourselves. Exactly. We run ourselves ragged looking for something outside, always outside ourselves. And all we end up doing is just perpetuating this endless cycle of like grasping, seeking, all of this. What our existence cannot deliver for us. As you say, if we turned our attention back in towards ourselves, then actually we can see that we have the potential for developing this proper, true happiness within ourselves. You're totally right. Yeah.
A little bit about that roadmap leading to this heavenly place within.
Sorry, is it?
A little more about the roadmap leading to this heavenly place within.
Well, we're going to get to the roadmap eventually.
We'll deal with the pain and discomfort for a while. That's why we got to be on that road. Is that or this?
Well, this is the thing, is that unless we have, I mean, obviously this is just like really an introductory course. So it's not enough for, and I'm not going to go into like even more detail about the suffering and the pain and all of this, because otherwise we'll have like 4 weeks of just talking about suffering and pain and pain and suffering and pain. And you'll be like, oh, right, well, I don't think I like that so much, right? So we will be talking about the other thing as well. But if we look at these, 2 choices that we have ahead of us, or we have not just ahead of us, we have with us right now, is continuing as we have so far, or finding another way. Unless we really understand, have a real thorough conviction that life cannot deliver what we actually want, that it is unsatisfactory, unless we have really internalized that, then of course we'll continue on as we have so far, because that is what we're habituated to. That is what comes naturally and automatically for us. So we really need to develop that strong conviction that actually this is not for me anymore. I'm going to look for a different method. That determination is what will propel us to keep working at the internal job that we need to do. So that's why so much emphasis is really given over to this idea of our experiences categorized by suffering. Yeah. So looking at those afflictions, first we have to think, investigate. if it is those afflictions that are what create all the problems within my mind, that really just cause my mind to be disturbed, that cause my mind to never get to this point of proper satisfaction and true happiness, then is it possible to actually get rid of those afflictions? Because if they're the problem makers, they're the ones that have to go. So for that, we need to look at how our mind actually exists. So looking inside, we can see that there are times when we have things like anger, we have things like attachment, jealousy, pride, and so forth, but they don't remain constantly within our mind. Like if you can think back to a time, you know, let's go back a few years, right? So think of a time a few years ago when you had very strong anger arise. You can probably think of the situation that caused you, I say caused you, but that was a condition for you to have that anger arise strongly in your mind. And if you think back to that time, you can probably even remember the experience of being quite angry in that moment. But right now, I mean, maybe now because you're thinking about it, a little bit of anger has come back. I hope not. That's the thing, is when we recall those objects of our anger, the danger is that our anger comes back. But if you think prior to remembering that particular moment, you didn't have anger in your mind. Well, I hope you didn't anyway. So that anger has not remained in your mind from that time several years ago until now. It was there, and then you had periods where the anger actually wasn't there. So what that means is that the anger and any of these other disturbing emotions, these afflictions like pride, jealousy, and so forth, they actually don't exist within the very nature of our mind, in the very nature of our consciousness. Consciousness itself is just that clear cognizing aspect, that clear and knowingness, that clear knowing attribute, the thing with which we know. There is no anger actually within the nature of that thing. It comes and goes. Likewise, attachment, it comes and goes. These are like things that are said to be like clouds that obstruct the sky. The sky is like our mind, and these afflictions, they come and go throughout our mind. When they come, they create problems. And when they go, we can have this sense of spaciousness. The mind is something that is actually stable and is constantly present. So if we're able to clear away these clouds, clear away, all those things that constrict and tight, cause the mind to be tight, then we will have this just open spaciousness of mind abiding. And that will be our experience. So that's really the first step to know, is that these things which are temporary, they come and go due to causes and conditions, that they can actually be reversed, they can be stopped. And still we will have this mind that will continue. So we'll do a little meditation here. I don't know if any of you have read the course materials. Have you read the course materials at all for this module? Okay, well, this is a meditation that's found within the course materials. They're very nicely put together. So if you do have a chance to read through them, there's very nice readings in there, and there are exercises you can do as well to really, get the most out of the program. And this is one of the meditations from there. So it's just a little short meditation. So sitting comfortably in your chair and letting the mind just relax into the body. Might even like to do 1 or 2 deep breaths. Just let that sense of relaxation pervade down from the crown of your head, through your shoulders, down through the torso, and legs all the way down to the ground. And let the mind rest naturally, just on all those sensations that you feel throughout your body. Feelings of warmth and coolness. Sensation where your clothes touch your skin. Feeling of weight where your bottom touches the chair and your feet the floor. Noticing the rising and falling of your abdomen as you breathe. And the subtle sensations, the blood moving through your veins. Just letting the mind rest on any of those sensations. Looking at the body as a whole. Now turn your attention to your experiences in this life. Look into what your experience is like. when you have a greater sense of delusion, or affliction, and those disturbing emotions clouded your mind. Maybe a sense of frustration, aversion, or fear. So at those times, what was the experience like within your own mind? Was the mind open and spacious? Was it tight, constricted? Now try to recall a time when these afflictive emotions didn't have such a tight grip on you. A moment when your mind was calm and clear. And you're released from the grip of attachment or anger. Just staying with that experience for a little while. So at a time when the afflictions are less present, is there a greater increase in your sense of well-being? Or do you find it unpleasant? How does it feel when you have this more openness, sense of inner peace? Satisfaction within your own mind. And the afflictions are absent. The mind is just resting in that natural state. You feel a greater opening, available for love, kindness, joy. So just compare both these states in your mind. The one where you had the time and you're under the control of the afflictions. And the time when your mind was open, clear, stable. If you were to choose between the two, which one would you choose? Does it feel possible to train the mind so that you can follow your choice? Enhance that greater sense of well-being. Allowing the mind to shine through, unclouded by those afflictive states. And gradually widen your perspective from just yourself, thinking of those around you, in your own household, in your own state, country, countries throughout the world. All those beings, both human and non-human. They're all just the same as ourselves, wanting happiness, not wanting suffering. Just letting a sense of care and love arise for them within you. Generating the thought, may all of us find true and proper happiness. May we have the strength and courage to help each other in this pursuit. Okay. So, were you able to recollect when we went through that meditation? Were you able to recollect a time when you felt your mind was more, tight with the afflictions, and then generate that sense of openness and spaciousness when the afflictions were not present? Did you get a sense of the difference between the two experiences? Christine, yes, a little bit.
Yes. Before I met the Dharma, I remember a lot of times when my mind was overwhelmed with anger or sad, and I was like, I want to lash out and that. But having met the Dharma I've been practicing Buddhism for a long time now. When anger does arise, I know some antidotes to help it, and so it doesn't come full blown anymore. So my mind is a lot more peaceful. Yeah. So it has made a lot of difference.
That's excellent. Excellent, really. So that's gradually moving towards this state, and down the track, just through seeing that you've been able to make a difference in the level of anger that arises and the degree, right? So through that can give you confidence that over time you can reduce it to a point where it doesn't arise at all. Because if it's possible to do it a little bit, it's possible to keep doing it, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah. So that's excellent, really excellent. And when you compare that to a time when you don't have the anger at all in your mind, or you don't have other afflictions arising strongly in your mind, can you then get that sense of the difference between being tight, you've got these clouds that are covering that natural nature of mind, as opposed to when it's open and free?
Yep. Yes, definitely. It's more peaceful, and yes, for the peaceful mind.
Exactly. And when you have that peaceful mind, you have that stable mind, the calm mind, then you have that foundation for all the positive qualities to grow. It's almost like they naturally, spontaneously want to arise at that time. Do the rest of you get a bit of a sense of that? How, if you can reduce those times when the afflictions are not in control, they're not clouding it in, then the mind has this capacity. It's like a natural capacity for things like love and kindness and care to arise. Yeah, Scarlett.
Hello. I know that not that I know, to understand that, anger arises when the ego doesn't get what it wants. And, that's a lot in me. unconsciously, right? And so I'm wondering if moving forward, you will help us with like when anger does arise, what are some antidotes? I know Christina spoke about some antidotes. I'm really keen on like having some antidotes in my back pocket because when my mind is very free and very spacious, there's this like incredible joy that comes out of it. I can't even explain it. And it's like, what can I do to benefit? A lot of like is what I'm gonna think. Oh, I just met that person. They're going through a tough time. What can I do? I notice when my mind is calm, it's at ease, it's not afflicted. There's this spontaneous, I want to do something for someone.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. So this is really the natural potential of our mind that is constantly clouded because we have, going from anger, attachment, jealousy, pride, all of this stuff is buffeting us around all the time. And it's keeping that nature of the mind obscured. So you're exactly right, is that if we can find a time when we don't have those present, then the mind naturally, it like wants to, like there's this natural sense of wanting to benefit others that can arise.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
like completely. And I love that feeling. So, yeah, will you be giving us at some point some antidotes for like counteracting anger
I certainly can. Yes. I
when we're
mean,
in the thick of it?
when you're in the thick of it, it's always a bit tricky. So when you're actually in the thick of anger, this is one of the tricky things with our afflictive emotions, with our disturbing emotions, is that we're so habituated to them that it's like you just encounter an object for your anger, and due to that and a few other conditions arising, the way that we think and so forth, that it's like anger just comes straight like that because we're so familiar, so habituated. And once the anger has arisen, then it's really hard to then kind of wind it back to no anger,
Yeah.
it's like a tractor has gone in one direction and you've got like a little human hair that's tied to one end of it and you're trying to pull it back.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's quite hard.
Hmm.
So when you're right in the thick of anger, generally the best thing to do if is to kind of go for a walk or do something different to kind of just change it up so that you're not focused on the object of your anger like this. It's like moving your attention away to something else.
Um,
Because that anger is coming from my mind. It's not, nobody has created that anger. It's as I'm learning, it's arising in me because of causes and conditions I've created. But still, the ego in me doesn't see it. The rational mind doesn't see it. And it can just kind of linger. Like I might calm it down for a bit, then I'll like kind of come back up. So yeah, I'm just curious some things to do.
um,
Yeah. Oh, Christine, yeah.
yes. There's been times when I get really angry, and you can't get think of it any other way. I say mantras to calm my mind down, and it works really well. You just, pick whatever which one works for you. Whether it's Om Mani Padme Hum or Tara, it really helps you calm your mind. I mean, because that works for me. So to you get it calm to you can help. Work with, figure out why you're angry and work with them, work with
Yeah,
it.
that's also a great idea. It's like it serves two purposes there. If you want to recite mantras, that's excellent because on the one hand, you're doing something that's like a positive practice. It's something that directs your mind more in a positive direction. Because especially if you recite something like Om Mani Padme Hum, and maybe it will help you recollect like His Holiness the Dalai Lama, or Chenrezig, the Buddha of Compassion, which it's a mantra of. So it can help shift your mind to a more positive focus. And again, like I was saying before with the walking, you're interrupting your single pointed concentration on that object of your anger.
Hmm.
So that can also be very helpful if that's something that you feel affinity towards. Not everybody will necessarily feel an affinity towards reciting mantras, but that can be something quite helpful. The work in terms of internally, you'll have a better opportunity of changing what's going on in your mind at that time when the anger has subsided a bit. Like right when you're in the thick of it, it's quite hard and you need to put into practice like some of those sort of more immediate antidotes, like Christine said, of like reciting mantras or just going for a walk, something that shifts your mind away from the object, that can be helpful. And then when your mind is shifted away from the object, then because anger needs an object, then, you know, it helps to reduce that down. The other thing that you can do, if you've kind of trained your mind into it, is when you find yourself getting angry, you can think to yourself, hang on, I've made a mistake here. Because anger only arises on the basis of mistakes. So I've made a mistake. What's the mistake that I've made? And that shifts the focus back actually internally back onto the anger. The anger is what we call a wrong consciousness. It's not accurate. And so where have I gone wrong in my way of thinking? So that gives you an opportunity to kind of investigate, but it's quite hard to do in the moment of anger. It might be easier once the anger has reduced a bit and you can start to think, well, you know, like it's, you know, what's gone wrong in this situation? What's gone wrong in my mind? What have I made a mistake about that I've ended up getting angry about? Sometimes it can be like, you know, you've had the thought, oh, this person is harming me intentionally, you know, through they've had entire control over their actions. And on that basis, they're harming me in this moment. That's a mistake because none of us have control, like complete control over our actions. We don't have control over our minds, you know. We ourselves know through getting angry, we know that, you know, it's like, I don't choose to get angry. It's just like arisen beyond my control through all the causes and conditions coming together. And if I had a choice to get angry or to be happy, having seen how much these things like anger cloud our mind, cloud that natural potential of mind, that natural potential for joy and love, right? You would choose to not get angry. So it's the same for everybody else. Everybody is acting out of this desire for their own happiness, desire to not have suffering. And yet we always make a mistake and we think it's things like anger and jealousy that are going to bring the happiness to me, that are going to stop my suffering. But we know that actually they just contribute more and more to our suffering. So everybody acts in the same way. That's actually a reason to have compassion for others, not a reason to have anger for others. So this is some of the ways that you can think, you know, when the anger has started to decrease a bit. But it does require, you know, consistent effort. You know, it doesn't like happen overnight. All of a sudden, these, you know, more positive, correct ways of thinking won't automatically, just thinking them once or twice won't straight away stop you from becoming angry at all. It takes time, you know, it takes consistent effort and investigation. But does that resonate for you, Scarlett?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for suggesting that. I like what you said, what mistake I've never heard that. Like when my mind has calmed down to ask myself, what mistake have I made?
Yeah. And I'm not talking about like, you know, what did I do to therefore make this person treat me in this way? I'm not saying that at all. You know, it's not like putting the blame on yourself for you having experienced, you know, this maybe quite bad situation. It depends on the situation, right? So if somebody verbally abuses you, for instance, I mean, of course, sometimes it is the case that we might have done something wrong and somebody on that basis might have gotten angry at us and verbally abused us. It's possible, like, you know, if you're driving in traffic and you make a mistake as you're driving and the other person who you kind of cut in front of and you didn't mean to, and then they give you a serve or something like that. So it's possible, like at those times, we make a mistake. And because of the other person's habituation to their own anger, instead of them recognizing that we made a mistake and gone, oh, they made a mistake, no worries, there was no harm done, it was fine, you know, instead, because of their habituation, they just immediately get angry, right? And then in that case, you'd be like, oh yeah, I made a mistake. Try not to make a mistake in the future, but it, you know, it was kind of unavoidable in the moment. What I'm saying about what mistake have I made is like, what mistake have I made in my way of thinking that has led to this anger arising?
Oh,
So
what's the
yeah,
difference? It sounds
yeah.
what's the difference? Because it sounds the same as what like it sounds like I should be asking myself like what mistake did I make? But you're saying what mis like not what mistake did I make in my action, but what mistake did I make in my thinking? Is that what you're trying to say?
Yes, that's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm saying. Sorry. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So what is the mistake that I made that led to, on the basis of the incident that's happened, led to me getting angry? Not as what mistake did I make that maybe acted as a condition for someone else to get angry or harm me. I'm not talking about that, but rather once I have incurred harm from somebody or something else, what mistake did I make in my way of thinking that then allowed the anger to come about, right? So there's this kind of process that we have in our way of thinking that leads us in the end to anger. It's a negative way of thinking or incorrect way of thinking that led to our anger arising.
That takes a lot of introspection.
It does. It does. But that is the way.
Hmm. Well, thank you.
Yeah. Because, if you're thinking about it in terms of what mistake did I make in my action, sure, if we did make a mistake in our action, that's something that we can try to correct for the future. But sometimes it's not the case that you made a mistake in your action. It can be that somebody else interpreted something you did in a particular way. They made a mistake in their way of thinking, and it led to them getting angry at you.
Hmm.
So you can't actually control whether another person gets angry at you or not through what you do, really. I mean, obviously, there are things that we can do that, in terms of like not harming others and so forth, that we should try and do. But we can even have a very positive motivation and behave in a way that we think is helpful to another person. But another person might interpret that as being harmful to them and get angry on that basis. We can't control that side of things.
Hmm.
The thing that we can work to gain control over is once somebody has done harm to us, how I think about that will determine whether I then get angry at them. And if it is a mistaken way of thinking, good chance is that it will lead to anger. Once we have anger, we have lost that open and spaciousness of the mind, along with all that potential that resides there. It can't see through the cloud of anger.
Hmm.
So we essentially end up harming ourselves. Not only do we have the harm from somebody else, on top of that, we've harmed ourselves. Does that make sense?
Oh, completely. Yeah, I'm going to think about this of what you said because sometimes it feels like it's justified to be angry, but at the end of the day, just listening to all the teachers talk, there's no like you should not. Our end goal is to not ever be angry, to eradicate anger.
If we want to have happiness and we don't want suffering, we need to eliminate anger. That does not mean that you can't act in an appropriate way in a way that's appropriate to the situation. It doesn't mean that you're always going to, sort of just like lie down and take whatever anybody, does or says. That's not what it means. The anger and the way of thinking and maintaining that openness and spaciousness of mind, allowing that natural potential of mind to flourish, right? That's what we need to be doing. It's what we talk about when we're talking about developing our mind in this Buddhist mind science program. What you then do physically and verbally should be determined on the basis of a positive motivation towards others.
Yes. Thank you so much.
There's so much to be said about that topic of anger and patience. I know some of you were here when I taught on that patience. I think it was for 4 weeks last year. So we spent a lot of time talking about anger and patience. But you could keep talking about it for a long time.
I was at the doctor's office and I'm waiting an hour and a half. And the lady kept saying, be patient. I said, I am the patient.
You were the patient, but were you
Yeah,
the
I'm
patient's
the
patient?
patient. You tell me, yeah, and to laugh. But I find that if I'm not angry in and of myself, dis at ease at a moment, things happen and they don't affect me the same way. When
Yeah,
I'm angry or I'm just unsettled and then something happens, I'm quick to try to sort it out there. So what it's been telling me lately is to make sure that I have myself on an even keel, to try to have myself, you know, pretty much on an equanimity. It's not this, it's not that. It's everything. Um, and it sounds, kind of like hallmarky, but it's just those simple things. Like just when we was doing the meditation, I was out of mind and body. And now that's a nice place to be because when things come up that can irritate, if I'm in that zone, they're not going to have the same effect. It's not going to be a direct hit because I'm
that's
just
right.
moving around a little differently. I didn't come for that. So it's how am I settling myself? And I do agree with you. When I'm in the mix and everything's spinning around, I can't even see what's going on, but I'm taken over by it. And I'm swirling. I got to cut off the blender, let it settle. And then I see the components.
That's
What
right.
happened, what got me there. Now I could get some clarity. So all of these things is sometimes we walk into things and we already know in our heads that it's a volatile situation. So we got the fire going already, and we just So it's like being really conscious. I think really mindfully aware what's going on inside of me. What is this? What's happening with the? I don't break it down that way, but just to be cognizant of what's going on inside of me, and to know that all right, I'm getting ready to go in the train. It's rush hour, and everybody's going to be within kissing distance. I mean, it's just everybody's so close. All you could wait for the next train. If you want to get where you go, and to realize that, and to say, okay, this is what it is. Like you said before, it's I'm navigating without trying to control. That's what it is.
Yeah. And there's different approaches we can take. We can either take the one that we're familiar with, which is like you're saying, you get on the train and you might be like, oh my God, there's so many people, people right in my face. And it's like, I can't bear the being around people like so close to me and it's so tight and everything. And if the weather's really hot, it's probably really unpleasant. And you've already built yourself up to this point where you're ready to be annoyed, right? Aren't you? Because you've already thought about it. You've prepared your mind for anger,
Yeah,
essentially. And yet we think that it's the people out there who are making us angry just by their very existence, when in fact, we're the ones who've prepped our mind. It's almost like we've said to ourselves, I'm going to get on that train and get angry. We haven't said it explicitly, but that's what we've done in our preparation for it. Alternatively, you might take a different approach and say, wow, isn't it amazing that we have these facilities whereby people can get from one place to another? All these people are just trying to improve their lives in whatever way they can. All of these people help make the entire world go around. I mean, I benefit from all these people, in fact. In fact, what's really interesting is I realize we're over time now. I'll tell you one story. It's just about trains from when I used to live in Melbourne, which is down south. And I was born there. And when I was growing up, you'd often have to wait like 20 minutes, half an hour if you missed one train for the next train. And, it's like because that was what the population supported. And so it was really frustrating if you missed one train, you had to get to work, you had to get to school, university, whatever, and you'd have to wait for the next train. And now, when I go back and I visit my family in Melbourne, the population has increased enormously. So there are more people on the trains, but you know what is that the trains come more frequently. So it's actually made life a lot easier just by having more people in the population. You know, if you need to get from one place to another. So if you think about it, if you change your perspective, you can say, well, actually, isn't it fantastic that there are more people living in the city? It benefits me just by their existence in the city, that I'm able to get about much more quickly. It's a different approach, isn't it? Or you might prep your mind for getting on the train by thinking, everybody who's on this train is searching for happiness in just the same way as I am. You know, wouldn't it be wonderful if just by seeing me in the future, having made that connection, I'm able to help them attain happiness, calmness, peacefulness of mind. You know, so your approach to getting on the train is to make a connection with all the other people who are on the train, who are right in your face, who are right there. It's also a good approach, isn't it?
Yeah. Spread love.
Yeah.
And know that each one of them has some aspect of discontent. Things aren't working right. They're going to work. The bills are over. Everybody's working towards being okay. And they're on that train to take them there. And here we are together. And once in a while, I do have that. And I look around and just feel for them. And it enriches my own heart.
Yeah, exactly. So the result that you get from it depends on what preparation, what you've set your mind up for before you encounter the object. So that what that indicates very strongly is it's not the object, it's not the thing that we get angry at that is the problem. It's what has happened in our mind beforehand. And once we've encountered that thing, you know, what happens in our mind, that's what determines whether we will have happiness in that situation, whether we'll have suffering in that situation, whether we'll have love, compassion, kindness in that situation, whether we'll have anger, tightness, cloudiness of mind.
What aspect of Buddhism is on the spiritual line, if it does coincide?
Sorry, could you say that again?
What aspect of Buddhism is aligned with spirituality, if it has that aspect to it?
What aspect of Buddhism? I'm not sure I understand your question.
Spirituality, not all religious people are spiritual. And I'm not saying Buddhism, I know it's not a religion. I'm just trying to give you a context to see what I'm saying. What I mean by spiritual. Spiritual is when you're moved inside the spirit. You know, like you go to sometimes I go to a Baptist church sometimes, and the preacher sometimes, but when they start playing those 9 slide trombones, these guys know how to, they take you up. They none of them read music. It's a spiritual experience that the mind has nothing to do with it at that time. The body is feeling it, and you're in a zone. Spirituality, the things that aside from the thoughts and the body, spiritually, a feeling for others, having concern for others could be a spiritual aspect. It's not connected to the body or the mind so much.
I'm going to have a think about that. Can I answer your question next week?
Yeah. Well, then I'll introduce the reincarnation.
Oh, yeah. Okay, we can talk about that as well.
So maybe spirit goes on that train. The reincarnated, the spirit of the soul of the being that has finished with that body.
I see. Yes. Oh, yeah, we can talk about this. Yep, sure. All right. Let me address it next week, because I realize we're over time a bit today. But
okay. So what was your line of studies? What did you get your paper for? I'm curious.
Art history.
History.
Art
okay.
history.
Art history. Whoa. Okay. Appreciation. Yeah. Whoa. Okay. Nice.
Yeah. So not quite the same as what I'm doing now, but yeah. There we go. All right. So yes, I will I will address your question next week. Is it Stefan or Stefan? I can't read you. Stefan. Okay, so Stefan, I'll address your question next week. And I'm sorry, everybody, we're a little over time. But so this is the first step in this module, is what we're looking at is how those afflictions, they cloud the mind, they tighten the mind. And when they're absent, we have this openness and spaciousness of mind, which is like this formative thing that allows space for things like naturally for joy, love, kindness to arise. So what we'll be looking at in this course is the methodology specifically. Here there's going to be one there's like lots of approaches you could take. Here there's one, we're going to follow what's called the 3 trainings, or the 3 higher trainings, to look at how that can help us to come into contact more with that natural openness of mind and reduce those afflictions, which are what cloud and tighten the mind. But that's the first step, is to understand that we have a choice before us. And we have to think about which path are we going to take, stick with how it is, or will we do something about it? And that there is the possibility to do something about it. Okay, I also see that there's quite a few chats in there, but I see, Shelley, you've dealt with all of those chats. Thank you very much.
Except Lozang, I sent you something I use that's helpful in terms of time change in a private chat. Okay. So there's a website. I find it helpful. See how you go.
Okay. Oh, yes, I see. Okay, well timed, buddy. Thank you very much. Hopefully I'm okay for the rest of this. Of course, I've got it sorted. It's 11 o'clock Brisbane time now.
No, you got it sorted, but if you ever need it again, it makes life a whole lot easier. Trust me.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
So we'll just, you're welcome. So we'll just finish off the session by just thinking about that any kind of positive potential that we might have created through this class, through our discussions, that it goes towards us being able to really recognize this nature of the mind and developing these positive qualities of mind and helping all other beings to be able to do that as well. Okay, thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing you all again next week.